All right, today we're going to, I told you a few weeks ago, I wanted to talk to you at some point this spring about the gap time. And today I want to bring this message, I want to bring this teaching to you, and we're going to talk about the gaps. We all face them, we all go through them. About 10 years ago, I received a CD from a friend of mine, and this guy named Judah Smith. He pastored City Church in Seattle, Washington. And great message. It was a leadership conference, and he talked about, to a group of leaders, about leading in the gaps, and we all face them. And down through the years, that message has meant a lot to me, and it wasn't only just a couple of months ago that I was with my grandson, my youngest grandson. He and I were taking a little road trip over to Panama City, and he started asking me, he's 4, and we hadn't even got out of Niceville. Are we there yet, Papa? Are we there yet, Papa? And it reminded me of this teaching, so I went back and listened to it, and I just really felt compelled to bring this teaching to you today. Obviously, I'm not going to teach it in a leadership concept. I'm going to be talking about it in life in general. But if you got your Bibles, look at Mark 4, and we're going to look at Mark 6 today. I don't have them on the screens because there's just a lot of scripture, but I want to read it because you got to get the context of what we're talking about. Mark 4, verse 35 says, "On the same day when the evening had come, he said to them, 'Let us cross over to the other side.' Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was. And other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, 'Peace, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, 'Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?' And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, 'Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?' Then," everybody say then. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes." Over to Mark 6, verse 45. "Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Now when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now about the 4th watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea, and would have passed them by. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost, and cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. But immediately he talked with them and said, 'Be of good cheer.'" Now, if they're in a storm, and they're kind of superstitious anyway, and they see this figure walking on the water. They're scared to death already, thinking they're going to drown, and they see this figure walking on the water, and this figure speaks to them and says, "Be of good cheer." I mean, why? Why? Has anybody ever walked up to you when you're going through a horrific season of your life, and they go, "It's going to be okay"? And you just want to go, I just want to smack you. You just want to hit them right smack dab in the mouth. But here's Jesus going, "Be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid." That didn't help any. Then he went up into the boat to them, and the wind ceased. They were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure and marveled, for they had not understood about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. When? Everybody say when. When they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and anchored there. Jesus is going, "Be of good cheer," when all hell's breaking loose. And I'm sure there are people in this room that you have had individuals do something like that to you. You probably have heard messages, "Be of good cheer." I probably have preached messages up here on this platform when you're going through hell, and you just sat here on Sunday mornings going, "What do I have to be cheerful about? What do I have to be cheerful about?" Well, today I'm going to talk to you along the subject of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? When I took Connor, and we, of course, our kids are grown, but when our kids were small, and I'm sure your kids are the same way, when you take a road trip, the first thing they start asking when you're just minutes out of town, it's either, "I got to go to the bathroom," or, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" Well, Connor, being 4, if he asked it once between here and Panama City, from my house to my parents' house is about 68 miles, and if he asked it one time, he asked it a dozen times. "Papa, are we there yet?" "No, Connor, we're not there." Papa, are we there yet? And sooner at a point in time, there's a point when you just want to go, why would you ask that question? Have we stopped? We're still moving. We're still moving. Why would you know we're not there yet? When we get there, the vehicle will stop. We'll open the doors. We'll get out. Then we'll be there. Wouldn't stop a thing. I finally asked him probably about the time I got to Bruce, I just said, Connor, does it look like we're at Big Pop's house? He goes, no. I said, so we're okay? Yep. We hadn't got to Ebro. Papa, are we there yet? You know? Now, what is this little 4-year-old saying? What's he saying? What did our kids say? What did we say when we were that age on a road trip? We're not saying, are we? We know we're not there. We're saying we're bored. What we're telling our parents or our driver, whoever it is driving us, in my case, in our case, it was Pawpaw. Pawpaw, we got to coordinate this thing a little bit better. I've already done everything that I know to do. I've had my iPad out. The battery's already dead. What we've got to do, we've got to coordinate this so that I've done everything that I have with me to do, that we get there about the time I'm finished doing what I have to do with. I'm bored. I don't want to sit in this seat anymore. I don't want to sit here and look at the road. I've done everything I know to do. I'm just bored. So we've got to coordinate better that when I finish doing what I've got to do, that's when we're there. That's what we're saying, right? We're just bored. Well, have you ever asked God in your life, hey, God, are we there yet? I mean, you know you're not there. You're not there because you're still here. Have you ever asked God, God, are we there yet? I haven't received my breakthrough. My prayer hasn't been answered. My healing has been delayed. My destiny, I haven't realized it yet. I don't even know what my future is going to look like. And the thing about it is that your spouse knows, your parents know, your team knows, people around you know that you're not there, but yet we still ask the question, hey, God, are we there yet? There are many of you in this room today that you came here this morning to church because you know you're here, not where you're supposed to be. You're here, you're not there. Now, there's so much out there today. You go on the website, there are blogs, you go out, you look on Amazon, you go to bookstores, you watch television. There's so much out there pulling at us, telling us this is how you get from here to there. There's books, there's blogs, there's podcasts, there's sermons, all this kind of stuff. And I would love to be able to tell you this morning, as your pastor, I would love to be able to tell you when you'll be there, but I just don't know. I mean, in chapter 5 and verse 1, we saw the word then, when they crossed over to the other side. Chapter 6, verse 53, when they had crossed over to the other side. When is then? And when? When is then and when? It's when it is. Plain and simple, it's just when it is. In the stories that we read this morning, we're not told how long it took them to get to the other side. But if you pick up the books, if you listen to the podcast, if you listen to all these teachings and all this stuff out there from the various authors around the world, you will hear that if you do these 5 things, if you execute these 10 steps, if you implement these 5 principles, if you say this mantra, if you declare this every day of your life, if you quote these passages, memorize these verses, if you pray this amount of time every day at a certain time every day, then you'll be there. The problem is none of that is true. You feel good this morning? There is no exact timeline to the other side. There's no exact timeline to the other side. There's a key truth in this whole thing. You don't know your then and your when. I don't know my then and when. I don't know yours, you don't know mine. When you try to fit God into a formula or a mathematical equation, God will ensure that the equation will not work. He does that on purpose. You say, well, I thought we had a loving God. We do. I thought we had a compassionate God. We do. I thought we had an all-knowing God. We do. If he knows when my then and when my when is, why doesn't he tell me? Because life has to happen for us. Life has to happen for us. And when you start limiting God and putting God into the form of a mathematical equation or some 5 or 6 principles or 10 steps to get here or 15 steps to get there, God will make sure that that equation does not work. And it's not because he's mean. It's just because he's God. You see, life is not about a formula. It's about a relationship. God is a person. Well, I thought he was God. He is God in three persons. And we have to realize that what works for one of us will not work for another one. What works for you will not work for me, because I am in a dynamic personal relationship with Jesus Christ. You are in a dynamic personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's why it's called a personal relationship, not a corporate relationship with Jesus Christ. God doesn't take each one of us on the same journey at the same pace over the same length of time. We all have a different journey. We all have to go through different things. We all have to face certain circumstances, but the timeline for each of us is different, because that's who God is. And that's how it works. Now, as Americans, and we've been talking a lot about this on Wednesday night lately, as Americans, we love to have things happen in a certain amount of time. As a matter of fact, if we can have it happen anywhere from a second to 60 seconds, that's what we want. That's why we love the microwave. Put your food in there, hit the one button, in 60 seconds your food's hot and you can eat it. The problem is life doesn't happen that way. Life doesn't happen that way. And good food doesn't either, by the way, okay? I mean, something you could eat can happen in 60 seconds, but good food doesn't happen. It takes time. It takes time. But it's a relationship dynamic. Kim and I, we just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary just a few weeks ago. And I'm just going to tell you straight up, what keeps a marriage sexy and what keeps a marriage spicy is that you keep exploring and discovering the relationship side of things. The spice, the consistency of a relationship is that it is unpredictable. It's spontaneous. Marriage, if you're going to have a successful marriage at any level, it must stay in an ever-changing relational dynamic, or else it just limits itself to a contract. We stood before a preacher or a justice of the peace, we said these things, and we've agreed, I'm going to do these things, you do these things, and we're going to enter into this agreement together. Now here's the problem with that. Marriage was never meant to be a contract or an agreement. It's a covenant. And a covenant is different from a contract. But here's how we've dumbed down our marriage relationships. If you meet my needs and I meet your needs, then everything's going to be okay. The problem is that needs change with time. Things shift, things change. And if you and I stop in the discovery stuff, we're going to have a problem in our marriage. We're going to have a problem in our relationship. It's the same way with every other relationship that we have. Marriage is probably the most important one, but at the end of the day, every relationship, for it to grow and for it to flourish and for it to thrive, it has to be maintained in a way that we're continually discovering things about one another, because the things in our life change on a regular basis. After 35 years of marriage, I think I can speak to this morning. I'm going to speak to all of you gentlemen, all you guys in the room, those of you that are married, those of you that are not married. I want to tell you something this morning. After 35 years of marriage, I realized this. There is no mathematical equation with women. I'm telling you straight up. I know people have written books, 6 Steps to a Happy Marriage, 15 steps to bliss in the home. I'm telling you straight up, if you've been married at all, you understand, first and foremost, that you cannot put a lady in a mathematical equation or into a formula. They are the most complex creatures and beautiful creatures that God ever created. But they don't fit into an equation. Can I get a witness in the house this morning? All right? Just as it is in our marriage relationships and our friendships and other aspects of our relationship, it is the same way in our relationship with God. God will tend to lead you differently than he will lead somebody else. Well, I figured out these 6 steps, Pastor. I figured it out. I'm there. I'm where don't turn God into a vending machine. Well, I cracked the code. Well, if you've cracked the code, then you don't need God anymore. You don't need a relationship. If the code with God and the code in if it can be cracked, then we don't need relationship. All we need are principles and equations. But at the end of the day, God does not work that way. The problem that public speakers and teachers and leaders make all the time, especially in churches, is that we try to put equations and formulas and put parameters on God and go, if you'll stay in this little box right here, that everything's going to be great and wonderful in your life. And that's not how relationships work. If you don't evolve, if you don't morph, if you don't have something change, if you're not constantly staying in the discovery stage about your relationship with your spouse and your loved ones, and especially your relationship with God, you are going to find yourself in a place of stagnation, and you're going to find yourself separated from the very one that you want to stay true to the rest of your life. You cannot relegate it to an equation. You cannot relegate it to principles. There are certain things that we all do. Yes, I get that, but don't limit God by saying, God, you have to do it these 5 ways or it doesn't happen there. All right, so you're not where you used to be, but you're not where you're supposed to be. That's kind of the premise of this whole teaching today. You're in this gap time. Anybody in a gap time in the house this morning? You're not where you used to be, but you're not where you're supposed to be. The culture that we live in plays into this many times because we live in a highlight-oriented society. Why do we watch SportsCenter? You can get up, you can watch SportsCenter in the morning because you get the highlights of everything. I even saw that they had highlights of a cornhole tournament this week on ESPN too. You know? Someone asked me this morning, they said, did you watch the royal wedding yesterday? No, I didn't. That thing was long. But later in the day, I did watch some highlights. I flipped over here and saw this. I flipped over here and saw that. And beautiful couple. Loved everything that was going on there. Loved the African-American preacher. Nailed it. You know, and that choir. Woo. Them people in London never seen anything like that. But it was awesome. But I wasn't going to watch that whole thing. And multiple reasons. Nothing spiritual. It's just I don't like that. You know. But I want to be up on current events, so I clicked over, but I watched the highlights. I don't watch a lot of sports anymore. Why? Because it takes a long time to watch a game now. I mean, it takes a long time. I went yesterday afternoon. My grandson was playing in a championship game for Little League. Game started at 1 o'clock. It didn't end until 3:15. Little League. Little League. And I thought to myself, because if you get 5 runs, you know, the inning's over and all this kind of stuff, if they would let them play until they got 3 outs, we would still be sitting across from Edge Elementary this morning. We would still be sitting there. Nobody wants to watch that much baseball. Nobody. And you watch basketball. I don't watch a lot of basketball, but I always usually watch the Final Four or something like that. But there's no reason to watch the basketball game until the last 2 minutes of the game. Because this other stuff is, the game is played in the last 2 minutes. You know? So wait. Flip back and forth until then watch the last 2 minutes. It'll take you 45 minutes, but watch the last 2 minutes. Okay? We live in a highlight-oriented society. There's nothing made about the gaps. There's nothing made about the gaps. There's some reality TV that's on now that's literally surrounding the gaps, but I'll be honest with you, why? No one lives like that. No one lives like that. But that's our story that we're talking about here this morning. The disciples are not where they used to be, but they're not where they're supposed to be. Now, you and I will hear teachings on this. I've done teachings on this. And hopefully at this stage in my life, I've learned a few things, and that is that you can't teach the reason you're in a gap time. You're in the meantime, you're in the gap time because you haven't done this or that. If you do the right things, you won't have the meantime. But I've lived long enough and I've led long enough now to know this for certain. You can do everything right, and there's still going to be those times, those seasons that you find yourself in the gaps. You can do it all right. You can do it right, but it's still going to be there. 2 examples from Scripture. What about Saul of Tarsus? He's persecuting the church. God knocks him off the donkey. He gets gloriously saved, has a relationship with God. Don't you think with that conversion experience that he's ready to tell people about Jesus? No. God says, no, you're not going to tell anybody. You're going to go for 3 years to Damascus and Arabia, and you're going to be quiet for 3 years. Saul, who became Paul, the Apostle Paul, said nothing and did nothing. He was in a gap time. The most famous of all gaps in Scripture is the gap of Jesus Christ. We hear about the birth. We see him at 12. We don't hear or see anything about him for 30 years, or for 28 years. 22 years, 26. Anyway, until he's 30. I need my calculator when I start doing math. 18. There's a gap time of 12 to 30 years of age that we hear nothing about Jesus. Everybody has seasons of gap. We have those seasons when we're living in the meantime. What I want you to do today, one of the things I want you to take away from this teaching today is that you need to recognize the gap times matter to God. What you and I will do in these gap times will be key to our spiritual breakthrough, and it will be key to the fulfillment of the destiny that God has for us in our life. Now, we can draw three conclusions from the story this morning. The first one is this: it is impossible to get ourselves to the other side. It's impossible to get ourselves to the other side. Without God, you will not get to the other side. You will not get there. Mark says that they were straining at the oars. They were straining, they were rowing against the wind, and they were making no headway. John records that instance in Scripture. He said they had only made 2 or 3 miles. The lake is about 8 miles across. With all of their effort, they'd only got about halfway across. And all of our effort, and all of my effort, and all of your effort, straining with all of our principles and all of our equations and all of our steps, we will never get to where we're supposed to be. When we get to the other side, we'll get there by the grace of God and the grace of God alone. That's how we get to the other side. The second thing is this: we get embarrassed in the gaps. We get embarrassed in the gaps. We have these times, these seasons of gap in our life, these seasons of mean time in our life, and people come up to us during these times and go, "How's it going?" We go, "Well, praise God, things are good." Really? I mean, you're living in confusion. You don't know what's going on in your life. You don't know when this time is going to be over. You don't know when this season is going to shift. You don't know when this season is going to change. And you're there in this time of gap, this mean time, and you're trying to put on this good face. Well, praise God, brother, praise God, sister, everything's good. And people look at you like, "Really? Really?" We have this mask that we put on. We have this facade that we put on, especially around church on Sunday mornings, that we don't want anybody to know. We fall to the pressure of having to give the perception that we're there. The problem is we're not there and things are a mess. But instead of going, "I don't know how I am." And I understand why we do that, because typically if we've said that to someone, we've scared them to death, and they've either preached a very harsh sermon to us, or they've told us we didn't have enough faith. "Well, just have enough faith, brother. Just have enough faith, sister, and you're going to be okay." And the problem with that is, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So we put on this perception because we're embarrassed that our life is not where we thought it should be at this stage in our life. And we want everybody to have the perception that we've got it all together, that where we're supposed to be, and everything is really good. The problem with it is that there are very, very few people where that is the case 100% of the time. Actually, there is no one on this planet where that is the case 100% of the time. We all have seasons of gap. And we should be okay and transparent with one another, not to go, "I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just in this holding pattern right now, I guess." But we pull that back, and we want to put this facade out there. Here's something I want you to know. If you want to get to the other side, if you want to get to where you're supposed to be, then you've got to admit that you're not there. You've got to admit you're not there. If you don't admit that you haven't arrived yet, you're never going to get to where God wants you to be. You're never going to be where you're supposed to be in life. The third conclusion is this: we think only the spiritual elite get to the other side. We look at people in church, we look at people, teachers, preachers, we look at people and oh, if I could just have that, if I could get my act together like that, if I could get these principles, if I could do what they're doing, if I could have the experience that they're having, then I would be where I'm supposed to be. You know, and the problem with that is that that's just not true. The spiritual elite have they don't corner the market on getting to the other side. As a matter of fact, the spiritually elite have the same difficulties that the spiritually who are non-elite get there. The disciples, this group of disciples, these are the guys that are closest to Jesus. They're the closest to Jesus, but there's one verse there in Mark chapter 6 that tell us where these guys were, because it's weird. You're reading the story and all of a sudden he talks about their hard heart. They did not understand about the loaves because their hearts were hardened. This gives us a picture into the heart of these 12 guys that are traveling with Jesus. Their heart, they didn't understand about the loaves. They didn't understand what had happened. They didn't get all of that. Their hearts were hardened. Now let me tell you something. If you're a leader and you got a team that is stubborn and stiff-necked and they're not teachable, what do you do with that team? If I was in that boat with those 12 guys and they were hard-hearted and they were stiff-necked and they didn't turn the boat around, go back to shore, get rid of those 12, get 12 more. These 12 guys are not where they used to be. They're not where they're supposed to be. But they are the guys that are going to make it happen post-Jesus. Spiritually elite do not have the market cornered on getting to the other side. Here it says, when they had crossed over, these hard-hearted 12 got to the other side. Now, what did they do to get there? What does your other side look like? Are you still asking God, are we there yet? I've done this to increase my chances. I've done that to increase I've increased my Bible reading by 30% this year. I'm praying 15 minutes on average, 15 minutes more a week. I've applied more of the scriptures. I've gone to conferences. I've attended every prayer meeting that I can find in the tri-state area. I'm trying to find the secret to get into the other side. Well, let's look at the disciples. What did the disciples do to get to the other side? I've looked at it. I've dissected it. I've taken out commentaries. I've read the backstory and all this kind of stuff, and I can only find one thing in all of Scripture that these guys did to get to the other side. And here it is. They stayed in the boat. They stayed in the boat. Now, maybe some of them had thoughts of jumping ship. I'm sure Peter did. I mean, Peter said, please, I know how to do this. And he tried in the boat, and one of the guys, get back in this boat. But I'm sure Peter thought, I've walked on it once before. I will get out of this mess, and I will go back to the shore. I will walk on this water. But no one would let him do that. Stayed in the boat. There have been those times when you launch out in faith toward those others. You've been to a service. Maybe you've had a spiritual experience with God. Maybe it's alone in your prayer closet. You've had this spiritual experience and you know that God has something for your life and you know that it's there, and you launch out in faith and go, we're going to do this. And you push away from the shore and you start straining, you start rowing away from the shore, from this shore to the other side, and then at some point you see ahead of you the storm clouds raising, the storm clouds building in the future, and you look back over your shoulder and you see there's a party on the beach, and everybody's having a great time on the beach, and you're seeing all of your friends and your coworkers and all this, and it seems like everything's going great and going wonderful, but you've launched toward your destiny. You've launched toward your other side. Behind you looks great and wonderful, and ahead of you, it just looks like a storm building. And 100% of the time, the temptation is always to turn around and go back to the party, to go back to what looks comfortable and easy in our life. You and I have to recognize the significance of staying put where God has us. Stay put. Stay in the boat. Don't quit. Let me tell you something this morning. If you have never felt like giving up, then you haven't lived very long at all. And if you're a leader and you've never felt like giving up, then you've led for less than 6 months. I heard Tommy Barnett, pastor of a church of 15,000, 20,000 people in Phoenix, Arizona. Heard him say this years ago. He did it to a bunch of youth pastors. He taught the honor of wanting to quit. He said, if you're a pastor and you don't want to quit every Monday morning, then you're not pastoring correctly. And I was young and stupid at the time, and I'm going, now after 25 years as a lead pastor, I get it. I get it. But it's not just pastors. If you've led for more than 6 months, there are times that you've wanted to just jump ship and go, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. Some of you here today in this place, you have felt like quitting the past few weeks. You felt like quitting the past few days. All you see around you are the clouds gathering and the waves crashing. In the back of your mind, you're going, if I could just be like this person. But listen, the disciples had bad attitudes. They had doubt. They were anxious. They were worried. They had bad confession. But they stayed in the boat. And it's easy. I understand what's going on in the gap time. Proverbs chapter 13 tells us this, that hope deferred makes the heart sick. We've been talking about hope this entire year. When hope is deferred, when it's delayed, when it is put out there a little bit further, when there's a gap in our life, we get tired and we get weary during those seasons because we don't think we're ever going to get to where we're supposed to be. We don't see any hope. We don't know that we're going to get to the other side. And we start trying to figure out, how do we manage this? How do we deal with this? How do we navigate this? Maybe in your walk with Christ, you remember when you first got saved, you had this passion and this excitement. Maybe you're a leader here and you remember that when you first started leading, you had all this passion and all this excitement. But nobody told you from this side to the other side could be years. And it plays in the face of our culture where we want everything at the snap of a finger, the push of a button. We want it right now. And it goes against what we know every day in our life and the way the culture is pulling at us in our life. It's during these gap times, here's a word of caution for everybody in this room. Beware of a leadership attitude in the gap times. Beware of a leadership attitude in the gap times. In Genesis 15, Abraham is told, you're going to have a son of promise. He has 3 visitations from God over a 20-year period of time. From the time of the first promise until the fulfillment of that was 20 years. Somewhere in the mix of that whole thing, Abraham got tired of waiting. He felt like delay was going to be denial. And so he made a leadership decision along with his wife. And they conceived Ishmael. Ishmael was not the son of promise. He was not the promise that God had made to him. But he made a leadership choice and decided he was going to take care of it. He was going to help God out. He developed a leadership attitude. It's easy to do that. Men, let me talk to you guys here real quick. As men, as husbands, we tend to be fixers. We get in these gap times in our family. We get in a gap time in our family. We don't see our children living out their destiny. We don't see our children doing the things that we want to. So we make leadership decisions. I know what to do. I know how to fix this. But it is in those gap times that if you and I are not careful, that we will conceive our own Ishmaels. Because we believe that delay is denial. Look at the latter half of Proverbs 13:12. It says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. A dream fulfilled is a tree of life. It may take time. It may take a while. But a dream fulfilled. So when is when? I have no idea. For my life or for yours. I just know this, that for every one of us in this room, there will be a then and there will be a when. Stay in the boat. In Paul's writings to Galatians, he said this, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not give up. In due season. When is due season? When your season is due. When is due season? When your season is due. All through, we see this in Scripture, in the fullness of time. When is that? When the time is full. When am I going to have my then I can cross over? When am I going to? In due season. In due season. Sometimes you and I just need a friend to tell us, stay in the boat. And I may be your pastor this morning, but I'm also your friend, and I'm telling you today, whatever you're going through in your gap time, when you're not where you used to be and you're not where you're supposed to be, stay in the boat. Just stay in the boat. We've seen it here. We've seen it in this church over the last few years with individuals. They just maybe not like what's happening, maybe doesn't feel right, something going on around here. And so they just start jumping. They jump from church to church to church to church to church. Why? Because they're trying to get to the other side. I get it. The problem is you don't get to the other side by bouncing from here to there. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. You will get to the other side. When we're not where we used to be, but we're not where we're going to be. It's my job to stay in the boat. And at my stage in life, and even after leading for 35 plus years, I'm still learning how to trust God. I'm still learning how to trust God. Ephesians chapter 6 talks about putting on the armor of God. After you've done all, you put up, then it says, having done all, stand. Having done all, stand. Hey, God, are we there yet? Has the healing happened? Has the growth happened? Has the breakthrough came? Are my kids saved? My job situation changed? My relationships, are they solidified again? When we get in these gap times and we're asking God, God, are we there yet? What we're really saying is, God, I've done all I know to do. Are we there yet? And sometimes it seems that there's just no reply. It seems like God is just silent. So what do we do in those times? We stand. As a leader, I try to do too many things sometimes. As a husband, I try to do too many things. I try hard to fix stuff. I've made more leadership mistakes in the last 3 to 5 years than I've ever made in my entire life because I'm trying to fix something. But what I've learned and what I'm learning every day is there's just some things that don't need fixing. When your wife wants to talk to you guys, she doesn't want you to fix her. She just wants you to listen. God doesn't want you to fix something sometimes. He just wants you to listen and let Him take you where He wants you to be. Am I making sense to you this morning? Stay in the boat. As long as Jesus Christ is in the boat, I'm going to be okay. As long as Jesus Christ is in the boat, you're going to be okay. He was asleep in the first boat that we were talking about. He was asleep in there. And he asked him a question, why are you worried, guys? Why did he say that? Because he was in the boat. He was asleep in the storm. It's going to be okay. The second boat, he comes walking on the sea, showing his dominion over the wind and the waves. But when he steps in the boat, what happens? The wind ceased. Why? Because he's in the boat. He's in the boat. You remember when you were a kid and you fall asleep in the living room watching TV? And you wake up the next morning and you're in bed and your pajamas are on and you're in your bed and you kind of go, how did this happen? How did this happen? Last thing I remember was watching TV. And now I'm in bed. I wake up in bed with my pajamas on and everything else. How did I get here? When you were tired and you had no strength while you slept and rested, Dad found you and picked you up and carried you to where you needed to be. There are a lot of you in this room here today that you're anxious, you're worried, you're stressed out. I've got to do this or I've got to do that. I've got to get this fixed. But the word for everyone in this room here today is this: God just wants you to rest. And while you trust and while you rest, there is one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. He will be the faithful one. He is the righteous one. He is the holy one. He is the beginning and the end, and He is everything in between. He is your source. He is your strength, and He is going to sail you to the other side. And there's going to be a day, there's going to be a time when you wake up and you go, how did I get here? It is by His grace and His grace alone that He brought you to where you're supposed to be. So what do I do in the gaps? I stay in the boat. I just stay in the boat. My encouragement to you here today, whatever you're going through, whatever gap time that you're in, just stay in the boat. God's grace will carry you to where you need to be. Amen?